Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for round two, the evening virtual drive-in theater 40 Film Fest, where we're going to have some special screenings coming up in just a moment, and wanted to give folks a chance to arrive over since we switched over from the other stream. Hopefully you've made it over without any difficulty, and before we begin, I just wanted to, of course, remind folks that we are raising funds for the Anomaly Archives, the 501c3 Scientific Anomaly Institute nonprofit that I founded back in 2003. We are located in Austin, Texas. We are trying to raise $20,000. That is our annual budget, 3/4 of which is the rent that was estimated on our current location of the past 3 years. Sadly, we were informed a few weeks ago that we were not going to be able to renew the lease there. The nonprofit, who are our landlords, have their own challenges and have not given us an opportunity to renew that lease. So we are now on the hunt for a new location. So if you have any ideas for where in Austin that we can find a good space, 800 to 1,200 square feet for, well, a moderate price, I won't go into the details, but you can send us the details by going to anomalyarchives.org and finding the phone number there for our voicemail. You can give us some leads on potential locations, and there's also you can send an email to contact@anomalyarchives.org, and that is how you can give us some information that hopefully will help us find a new home. That is actually how we found this wonderful place that we've been at for the last 3 years. It was one of our email newsletter subscribers who found it and gave us the details on that. So we're really hoping that folks can help us with that. But so far we are on our way. This is the second to last of the streamathons, where you're doing 5 weeks, 6 different Saturday streamathons between November 21st, which is our first one, and the last one, which is next weekend, December 26th. And we have gotten just past our halfway mark. You can see from the graphic there, we are slowly levitating Patty the Bigfoot up into the glowing saucer through that levitating beam of light. And she is just past the halfway mark, and we are on our way to get her into that saucer, if at all possible. Don't worry, Patty will be safe. There's nothing invasive involved in her visit to the saucer. So you can find out all the details about the nonprofit, about the how to donate to the fund. We have a charity GoFundMe account. We've got a Facebook fundraiser link, and of course you can do it the old-fashioned way through PayPal, or even more old-fashioned, send us a check to the mailing address, which won't be the same for much longer, but hey, no worries. Anyway, we have some great movies coming up for you, and a very special guest I can't wait to talk to, and we'll be right back with him in just about 4 minutes, folks. So sit tight and get ready for Love and Saucers and keep folklore alive.
Up next, special screenings of Love and Saucers, plus keep folklore alive, with director Brad Abrahams.
Welcome, everybody. This is Smiles Lewis, and you are tuned in to the After Dark virtual drive-in theater, and we have got a special treat for you tonight. I'm so excited to welcome Brad Abrahams, who is a director and of a plethora of fine films. You can find out more about him at bradabrahams.net. And Brad, are you there? Oh my God! Oh,
hi.
See, I knew those were masks. I knew. That's the secret of the.
Yeah, David Huggins. He gave me the mask.
And he is the subject of the Love and Saucers. Man, you know, it took me far too long to finally see this documentary, and it was one that I had wanted to see for so long, and just had not had the opportunity. And of course, you even had a premiere here at the Alamo Draft House, right?
Yes, yeah, it was part of Fantastic Fest.
And was Jeff Kripal there?
Yep, Jeff Kripal came for the premiere. He drove from Houston so he could be a part of the Q&A, which was amazing, having him in the audience and then answering questions.
So I got to ask you the preliminary stuff, and we've just been barely getting to know each other this past year, and I was just so thrilled when you walked through the door, when your friend told me, "Oh yeah, my friend Brad, you know, the guy that did that movie, he'll be coming by," and I'm like, "What?" So have you always had an interest in the wide array of strange phenomena, or was there only one particular subject, or were you not interested at all as a child?
No, I don't remember when it began because it began so early on. And then it really blossomed though once I got into the Fortean Times.
Oh yes.
And I had pretty much like every issue for several years. That I was like, oh, there's so many stories to tell within this marginal realm.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the Fortean Times and Forteana in general is this broad spectrum that, you know, of course, Charles Fort tended to kind of tend toward a quote unquote toe theory of everything theory, but you know, something that's very obvious in the work that you've put out already is a focus on cryptozoology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've played a number of trailers for your different works that are in production or things that you've already released. The Cryptozoologist and Swan Song of the Skunk Ape, and well, you know, so is there a special place in your heart for Patty and Bigfoot, or what's
yeah,
the
yeah.
attraction?
I mean, Patty has obviously like a fascination and a lot of love for her, but I was always more interested in some of the obscure cryptids like the skunk ape, for example, especially living in Florida for a while. And in Canada, we have a host of our own. Ogopogo was always a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I like Champ. But it's never really been about, for me, that, I mean, I do think that some of these creatures definitely could exist, and that we shouldn't feel like we know everything at this point, because new species are discovered all the time. But it's really like also the culture of cryptozoology in the field and the researchers themselves, like that's just as fascinating and just as much of a draw for me.
Well, and you work commercially, you do a lot of travel, and I guess that's helped feed into the opportunity perhaps to go to some of these different places. And I one of our volunteers has once told me recently this idea that, you know, you see all these different shows on cable. There's just such this mass of para-oriented programming and content. A lot of it Bigfoot related. Obviously, there's been, you know, the rise and fall of not the fall yet of the ghost hunting stuff, but there really is this interest in this. But his observation was that it's all just tourism, or like that's right. Like kind of like what it really comes down to is like, it's kind of trying to seed that idea of, well, you should go to these places.
Yeah. I think that's a part of it at its, I think, most like basic level. And there's some good things about that, but I think that a lot is being missed if that's the only target that a lot of these content makers are going for.
And you've got a lot of different irons in the fire right now, if I understand correctly. Is obviously this is a very strange time to be trying to travel and produce that kind of material. Mm-hmm. But you've been at it for so long, and obviously chipping away at trying to get some more of your creative output onto those channels, so to speak. And calling these things channels now is so weird. Yeah. Everything is just so different than it used to be just a few years ago, as far as like streaming versus cable versus broadcast. It's all kind of, I guess, out the window at this point. But
right.
How is this affecting you? I mean, I think
it's actually been, I mean, on the negative side is just there's no shooting going on right now. There's no traveling for shooting. But on the positive side is all of the players in the streaming and broadcast world, like Netflix and HBO, Hulu, etc., are they specifically want documentary and documentary series content right now, because people are just like consuming it faster than it can be made. There's such a hunger for it. So because of that, we now have several projects in development that maybe before the pandemic might not have made it through.
And can you talk about any of those? Or
So Cryptozoologist was always going to be a feature film, a feature documentary, but we recently signed with this fantastic documentary company, Submarine Entertainment, and they're developing it into a series with us. So it'll be like, first season will be like 6 episodes, and then we'll see if we can take it from there, which is way more exciting. Like a feature would be maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours maximum. And a series would be close to like 5 hours or more. Yeah. So we can really deep dive and not just, spend a few minutes on the Mongolian death worm. We can spend like a half hour on Mongolian death worm if we want to, and go to Mongolia and, Indonesia to search for the orang pendek. And so it's really like endless, the places we can go and the creatures we can try and find. And besides that, you're going to be seeing a pilot episode for Keep Folklore Alive, and that is another doc series that's about sort of hidden folklore, at first starting in the US, but it's going to be global. And the first episode is about the town of Mount Shasta, and just the confluence of beliefs that have all sort of met up there for some reason, maybe because the mountain itself and the area really is special. But you have, you've got religions, art communes, spiritualists, ascended masters, channelers, ghosts, everything somehow just swirls around this town. So that's episode 1. And then we're going to do like Elf School in Iceland. We're going to do a local monsters episode, which is just sort of like backyard monsters. We're going to do an episode on Cassadaga, the spiritualist town in Florida. Episode on dowsing. It's just, there's sort of similar with cryptozoology. There's like an endless stream of fun things. Yeah.
The sizzle reel that you've got is just looks just sizzling. Like there's just so much great stuff awaits us in the future of Keep Folklore Alive. And the title alone, I mean, to me speaks to what the archives is all about. And that's why I was so excited when you offered to share that with our audience. And there's, again, so many other things that you've been working on. The Conspiracy Cruise, which obviously is having fun with a subject that has taken on a little darker tone of late.
When I wrote it and made it, I thought, well, conspiracies have reached sort of like peak mainstream culture, but in the year since then, I mean, it's exploded to proportions we never would have hoped would have manifested. And leading into that, I got hired to do a feature documentary about conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists. That's going to take, it's like a mix of character profiles and historians, psychologists, neurologists, just encompassing the whole age of conspiracy that we're in.
Wow. I'm intrigued, and I've got to wonder, I know I've touched on with you how, I am a conspiracy theorist. I think UFO people often get lumped in as conspiracy theorists. We were playing some video of the folks from the Stanton Friedman archives, and they kind of threw out this idea of like conspiracy theorists as ufologists, and it jarred me. Like, I mean, obviously, if you think that the government's covering something up, that kind of gets you into that realm. And they've absolutely been, like this, especially since the 80s. But all the way back. But I would just, I'll talk to you more about this more, but, I would obviously implore you to be balanced, because conspiracies are real, and there's real important things out there.
No, that's something that I've definitely fought for. There's historical precedent for it all. Tuskegee experiment, the Gulf of Tonkin, MK Ultra, NSA surveillance. It's just, but it's endless, So yes, that's a big part of it, that there's reasons why people distrust. And on the other end is, you have coincidence theorists, where people that think that there's absolutely no connections between anything.
Right.
Yeah. Or it's also called trustanoia, where you have a sort of pathological trust in all power structures.
Yeah. I mean, people like that. I mean, honestly, I think that's the bulk of humanity.
Right.
I mean, it's weird, because I do think people tend to be suspicious and xenophobic, but I think more often than not, people just kind of think, oh, the power structure, it's not out to get me. Surely. But, that actually, this kind of goes towards, you shared with me a rough cut of another bit that I'm curious if this is going to potentially be a part of what you're describing, this conspiracy theories, the series, Do You See What I See? Okay. I don't know if you want to describe that, but I did want to just comment that, I think you have a preview for it on your website, bradabrahams.net. And, but the rough cut that you shared with me, I told you is very powerful. And I really appreciated your asking the really hard questions of this subject. So I'll let you describe the subject.
Yeah. So, it's the story of this guy named David Dees, who I'm sure a lot of people watching have probably seen his art somewhere. He makes these very maximalist conspiracy collages. Sometimes there's like, 10 plus conspiracies in one. And they're very weirdly compelling. A lot of them are sort of disgusting and, racist in some ways or anti-Semitic. And I just thought that if you can profile someone like that and get the nuance of them as like a human being and try and figure out, how did you get here? How did you fall into these beliefs? Then it makes the task of understanding other people who are much less extreme than him easier, and like a dialogue could be formed. And sadly, he died just like a couple months after we filmed with him.
Oh,
yeah.
I can't remember if you told me that.
Yeah.
I don't think I realized. Wow.
It was just like in a sort of post credits thing. He got stage 4 melanoma, and basically because he didn't trust the system or the medical establishment, he decided not to get it treated and to just treat it himself by drinking baking soda. And eventually it got so bad he actually had to go to the hospital, and then it was too late.
Too late.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sort of a cautionary tale.
Very emblematic, if that's the right word, of I think a lot of. Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, shifting gears. So I guess was Love and Saucers your first big foray into this, or I don't really know the timeline of all these works.
Yeah, it was. I had done like a short, the Skunk Ape thing was before that, but that was the Love and Saucers was definitely the largest thing at the time, and like a actually pretty good self-contained story to tell with very limited means, because it was just basically one person in their house in Hoboken. So
how did you come to know about this artist, this experiencer?
Yeah. I think I had first heard about him on a radio show, and I think it was this like psychologist, talking about abductee experiences, and they mentioned David Huggins as one that his case as being like too crazy to even talk about. So that was the one that I was obviously most interested in, and proceeded to try and track him down and even just see some of his art, but realized he was not on the internet. He's never used the internet. Wow. And I had to find a neighbor of his who was Farah Yurtzu. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Oh, yeah.
So she was his neighbor, his next door neighbor. And I got in touch with her, and she was like, I actually made an art book of David's work. And so I bought that, saw the paintings, then I was really sold. And she gave me his home number, and I just sort of cold called him, and he was game from the start.
Well, he definitely seemed like a warm and open person.
Yeah.
The book,
it's called Love in an Alien Purgatory.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He
actually hated the title.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because of the word purgatory, because he was raised sort of like fundamentalist evangelical.
Oh.
And he rebelled against that. And just because the word purgatory has those religious connotations, he didn't like it.
I wonder, so that's one of the books published by Anomalous Books, who are great friends and supporters of the Anomaly Archives. And we have all their books at the archives, multiple copies for lending and for reference. And they are offering right now, I won't play the whole clip, but they're offering to a limited number of people a free book of their choosing, and could be one of the books. You just never know.
I highly recommend it. Yeah,
it's a thin but coffee table sized book with lots of this great art. And I say great art, I mean, I am no judge of artistic ability, but it is provocative, that is for sure. And as people will see from this documentary, which I had to click the not made for children button for the YouTube thing.
Painted nudity and sexual acts.
We should, folks. This is adult, mature content. But it's a fascinating variation on a already well-worn path of storytelling associated with the UFO contact experience, the alien abduction experience. But it's very, very different. And I think I first heard or saw pictures. I think I first heard about it probably through James Mosley's Saucer Smear newsletter.
Okay.
And maybe first, this was probably right around 1992, I think.
Yeah.
And it may have even been at the MUFON conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1992. I just, for some reason, I feel certain that I saw something about it there or right around then. But then that was also the height of my getting into all these things, like full time. So, I could ask more questions, and I certainly want to, but so we're gonna show Love and Saucers, and then we're gonna I'll just right after that we'll go into the episode of keep Folklore Alive, Telos or Bust. And then after that, we'll come back and have a little bit more discussion. And
fantastic.
And, hopefully we have some questions from our audience. And if not, well, whatever. We'll have had a fun time. And I'm really looking forward to watching this stuff again. So thank you, Brad.
Yeah, one thing I just want to say is the episode of Keep Folklore Alive, it's a rough cut. So this is just a sneak preview. You're the first people really ever to see it. It's still being worked on, waiting for funds so that we can finish it. So just keep that in mind while you watch it.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, folks, put your seatbelts on. Here we go. We'll be back in, I guess it'll be about an hour and a half. So, all right. Stay tuned.
Bye-bye.
Well, when I was 17, I lost my virginity to a female extraterrestrial. That's all I can say about it.
A term that people have applied to Mount Shasta as a vortex of energies, of interdimensional portals, of UFO contactees.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Wow, a little abrupt ending there, but as Brad said, it's a rough cut. Wow. Okay, so I'm bringing Brad back. Hey, man, how you doing?
Good.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed watching those again, and I hope our audience did too. I know I've discussed Love and Saucers a little bit with you once before, but as always is the case, there's constraints of time and whatnot. But there were then, there are now. But I really. I thank you so much for getting into this field and for taking on these subjects. I'm just so glad when creative people bite their teeth into the subject matter and do such great work with it. And I really do enjoy everything I've seen of your work so far. I really have enjoyed. And I mean, hey, it's all provocative, and whether it's the conspiracy stuff we were talking about earlier, or this UFO work with Love and Saucers, or the cryptozoology stuff, because so many people in that field, or all these fields, are just characters that just are larger than life and amazing. I did want to pass on some questions.
Sure.
How many hours of footage did you get with David? How well did you get to know him?
So actually not that many hours of footage. It was really lean. The ratio was really low. I used pretty much everything that I had. Partly because there was almost no budget for it. So we didn't get to go out and film that much with him. And I really got to know him a lot better after the film. I started sort of acting as a go-between between him and people that were, interested in either buying his art or who wanted to just chat with him about their own personal experiences or who wanted to interview him. And so we started talking a lot more after that. And at a certain point, he was calling me like every other day, just asking me how I was doing, how my family is doing, how the crew was doing, just really sweet. Tells me if he has any other encounters, if he's working on a painting, if he has surgery. So I feel like we know each other pretty well now.
And are you still in contact with him? Is he still?
Yeah, it's been I have to actually check in on him because he was going in for like his second hernia operation. And at his age, he's probably like 78 now. It's a routine, but it's still iffy, especially during a pandemic. So I hope he's okay, but otherwise, it's like a lot of elderly people. It's been really hard on him because he's got to basically be a shut-in. And he does have respiratory issues. So I think he's pretty lonely, but at least he's got his ex-wife living with him.
Yeah. And that is one of the amazingly strange and interesting parts of this story. What was the most surprising thing you learned while making Love and Saucers? This particular question was for.
I guess, it wasn't really necessarily a surprise, but more like a revelation while filming. And this was maybe like a year or two after we started filming, where we were just, every time I had asked him about his childhood, he would respond, "Oh, it was great. It was just a normal childhood. It was a happy childhood." And then one day while we were filming him painting, he just started opening up about it, and it was not happy. And he, that's when he starts talking about that it was really hell, and they were alcoholic and, probably abusive. And that, that's trauma. I don't know how irregular of a trauma that was in like the 50s in religious rural Georgia, but still a trauma that I didn't know about and that he hadn't talked about before.
And
one other thing is that I didn't know about until I got there the first time and went into his room for the first time was that he had that 2,000 strong VHS collection
right.
of all horror and sci-fi. I was just like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a whole other thread there. But before I lose my train of thought, I know. So in talking to you before about the film, I commented about the storytelling framing of the timing, and it's to me it's integral to this case and its relevance to the broader abduction phenomena, and the way I, as someone who was honored to have been asked to lead a support group, study group of experiencers, abductees, not being one myself, and the strange wide array of experience. So in the storytelling, this whole thing about like he tells the story, or you present his story the way I suppose he probably presents it to people, which is this is how I remember it as he remembers it now. And then you, at some point, finally, thankfully, wagging my finger for those who aren't sure what's going on. You introduced the most significant point from the perspective of, is this real, or when did what is the nature of this memory of his, of the fact that he was triggered by a Bud Hopkins book. And of course the question I have is are you aware that did he ever undergo hypnosis? Because obviously Bud Hopkins is known for having practiced hypnosis even though he was not a clinician.
Yeah, so David never underwent hypnosis, and I had actually was planning to have him go under hypnosis while we filmed, and he seemed to be interested in that. It ended up being nearly impossible to find a practitioner hypnotherapist that would do it. I think they were just sort of afraid of the situation and the cameras. And I finally got one person to agree to it. But then David got cold feet and he said, I don't need to undergo hypnosis because I remember everything. But I think maybe he was also just probably nervous about what might come up.
Yeah. You mentioned what he mentions in the film of absolute abuse. I mean, just the mentioning of you being used about. I mean, I know people disagree about this, but I mean, yeah, it's physical punishment, whatever, however you want to describe that. And that leads to his second telling of how he left.
Right.
And I don't know if I even really caught this as dramatically this time or as before as this time. And how, in the first part of the movie, he talks about, I'm going to go off to art school, and he leaves.
Uh-huh.
And then it turns later, after he's revealed how this all unfolded after he'd finally gotten married, and then the memories come. I mean, it's a very strange storytelling tool, but I think I as much as I was wagging my finger and have before, I do think it helps actually dramatize just how important that element is in his story and these kinds of stories, because we all kind of wonder, like, when did these memories emerge?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it seems, it was confusing for me too, because it seems like, even though he says all the memories were triggered later, it seemed like there were events in his life that were, that would say that he was recalling what was going on actively during. And so I think it's a very odd sort of blurring of time and memory that I never really wrapped my head around. I don't know if he does either. I think it's probably all jumbled up in there.
Well, I also I think it's powerful, the familial aspect of the ex-wife whom he's been living with for decades. After this revelation, after their divorce, they have a child. The child is willing to come on camera, which was a coup, just amazing aspect in and of itself. And I think maybe, I mean, whatever. I imagine the son's just like, well, my son, my dad's a good guy. I'm going to support him. I don't know if I believe this. Probably doesn't. But
what's interesting is what you don't see is David was sitting like just off camera, sort of staring at his son the entire time. And I didn't want that, but I was wondering if David wasn't in the room, if his son would have given any different answers.
Yeah, that's an interesting detail.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things about this film I want to explore more with you, and it was such an undertaking. I can only imagine to have taken on perhaps the most hot, scandalous. I don't know what the right word is. I mean, people make jokes about Strieber and other abductees and the sexual violation element, but there's so much in his account that absolutely resonates with every other account I've ever heard, including these weird, twisted, I don't mean that in a judgmental way, sexual aspects, and it's just fascinating. And there's so many things, and it occurred to me that he may be one of the first to have really tried to externalize their experiencing of these insectoid, mantoid, mantis beings, which again I started hearing about in the midst of the UFO, the alien abduction pandemic craze of the time,
right?
But to see it, and that's so much the power of this guy's story is in the art.
His paintings are so cinematic in and of themselves. He's got even though he's like an outsider artist, he has a pretty fantastic sense of like setting the scene, I feel like.
love the ending credit sequence. I'm curious about the music and sound design, and I'm curious if you can juxtapose it to moving into talk of Keep Folklore Alive, because I think the soundtracks are very different, but I like them both for different reasons. Also, just I saw in the credits, archival researcher, and there's such an archival element to the. And I saw the archival researcher credit in Love and Saucers, but then there's such an archival element to the Telos or Bust, Keep Folklore Alive element. So sound design.
So it was all after Love and Saucers. It was all original. A different, the composer was a different person. He's Roberto Auser, is his sort of stage name, and then sound design was a separate studio that did it. But both of those, I think, they're like half of the movie. I feel like almost in terms of setting the tone and the mood and transporting you into David's world.
There was definitely some. I'm where I am. There's been some strange sounds outside my house today. There were screaming children, and then there was some kind of weird motor sound, and I'm like, are we having an earthquake? And I think it's just like but there are definitely some sound design where I was like, what? That's really kind of weird and not musical and more like just like ambient sound design.
Yes.
But then there's some very nice musical pieces in it.
Yeah.
Compared to, a more new agey kind of feel for appropriately so for Keep Folklore Alive, Telos or Bust. And then the archival researcher. So what was the archival research for Love and Saucers? Just to close the door on the Love and Saucers.
Yeah, it was mostly because David has no home movies and very few photos. It was finding things that were sort of a specific place and time.
Gotcha.
And it seemed appropriate, and I think it played pretty well. And then just finding photos of times and places in Manhattan and Hoboken, pretty simple stuff, nothing to, and also all like the old movie trailers. But for the Folklore series, specifically this Telos or Bust, a lot of it is just art, like finding, it's like paintings and art and illustration is kind of a core part of the history of Mount Shasta. It had its own style of art, basically, and so a lot of the work sort of went into finding that, and also just like old 60s to 70s footage of the town itself and the mountain.
So wow, love Keep Folklore Alive. When will we get to see more episodes?
Yeah, so we've shot some for the second episode, which is the Support Your Local Monsters. We shot the Goat Man of Lake Worth is sort of one segment in there. We want to do the Hodag and the Van Meter Visitor too, but that all got canceled because of COVID. And so that's really the holdup right now. But we're working with a production company now to get funding in place, basically, and also to get a host. We're going to do like Outer Limits / Twilight Zone-esque intros and outros. And so we're trying to get someone, the most kind of on a limited budget, the most recognizable person that we could get. It might be John Waters.
No way.
It might be. Yeah.
Oh my God. That would be so amazing. Of course. Why not? So that was fantastic. Thank you, says
thank you.
The Thrill House person. And that was in regard to, I think, the second, but maybe just the totality of it. Just some quick things, again, there's so much I would love to ask you, but I don't want to keep you too long. But with the Keep Folklore Alive, Telos or Bust, they're actually, I think somebody utters the phrase spiritual tourism, which I found interesting in light of what we were just talking about. And I find it interesting that you were saying that this idea of an art style associated with it, and that's kind of interesting and funny, kind of following on the heels of this other artist. And the archives research. So I love the guy. You walk into his house and he says at some point, I have 20,000 books or whatever. And of course I'm thinking, oh my God, what a great library. Who's he going to donate it to?
Oh, and I should mention that there are numerous stills that are from the Anomaly Archives library.
Yay!
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that proved helpful. Yeah, I thought I recognized a little bit there, and that's what we're here for.
Stuff that would have been absolutely impossible to track down otherwise.
Yeah, you buy expensive copies if you can find them on eBay or something.
Yeah.
And that particular source material is just fascinating, and without going into a huge discussion about the nature of metaphysics and these inner earth traditions and Shambhala and hollow earth, inner earth, telos, it's really interesting. I think there's always been it's an undercurrent, pun intended. I mean, it is this weird river of energy and psychic human consciousness that seems obsessed with this idea. So it's a great episode to have started with. Well, so what's you got your hard at work on more material of this nature?
Yes.
And do you have updates coming, like say through your website or?
Mostly through. I don't use the social media too much for that stuff, but Instagram is mostly where I might post something, or Twitter. But yeah, my website is not updated as much as it should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I hear that from folks a lot. Really, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm just so glad that there's somebody like you working on this kind of subject matter, and looking forward to many, many years of more creative output. And in other areas too, you don't have to concentrate on this. I know you don't. You've got your other work cut out for you. But
thank you, and for everything you do, and like the Anomaly Archives. I think I mentioned to you, it's like the I think the coolest thing in Austin, or institution in Austin, and there's very little left here in this city that is unique, like the Anomaly Archives. So I'm hoping that this is as successful as it can be for you.
Well, maybe we'll revitalize it, because
get even better.
Having lived here most of my life, I'd like to see it get.
Yeah.
We want to make Austin more weirder than it's ever been. So thank you so much. Y'all have a great evening, and we'll talk soon. And be safe, and we'll see each other in person soon without masks eventually.
Yes.
So.
Bye, Smiles.
Have a good night. Well, folks, that was Brad Abrahams. You can go to bradabrahams.net. Of course, as he said, he's not keeping it as up to date as he might want, but we'll keep you posted, of course, because we're going to be following him. So hopefully we'll have some updates. We are continuing on for another week. Next Saturday, we've got another great batch of stuff, including possibly folks who were for today, but we'll see. Stay tuned. Go to anomalyarchives.org and you can find updates. And I'm going to end it there. Thank you all for staying with us, and have a great day, night, wherever you may be.